Ubuntu 23.10 has been released and it's fantastic. It is fantastic. Okay, all right. I need to back up a little bit here. Ubuntu 20, my apologies. I do not feel overly professional at the moment because this is too utterly ridiculous on so many levels. Okay. So Ubuntu 23.10 came out. Ubuntu 23.10, by all measures, seems to be actually not a bad release of Ubuntu. It has what I think is one of the better changes in Ubuntu in quite some time. That being that the minimal installation option for the desktop is now the default. What that means is, by default, when you install the desktop version of Ubuntu 23.10, the latest and greatest, what you get is an installation that does not have LibreOffice, that does not have Thunderbird, that does not have a whole bunch of applications. So it's a much lighter system that you can then add what you want to. I always prefer that because honestly, I end up installing things like Ubuntu and apt removing so much software before I decide on exactly what I want and how I want it installed. It still is very heavy leaning on the snap for the packaging and the containerization, which I don't 100% love. And it's not because Snap is made by Ubuntu. I just don't love the design of Snap packaging. I think that there's some better ways to do things. But even more than that, I don't like the performance and bugginess related to snaps. If they fixed some of the performance and usability bugs in Snap packaging, I think I would like Snap packaging a whole lot better. For example, web browsing, like in Firefox, that's installed as a Snap, is still slower than just apt-get installing Firefox. Literally, if you have an Ubuntu system and you remove the Snap version of Firefox and you can manage to shoehorn a deb version of Firefox on there, you'll have a faster Firefox. Same version of Firefox. It'll just be faster and it will have less bugs. Printing is still kind of a problem. So it's not perfect, but it is cool that they are leaning towards that minimalist install. They still have an option where you can do a full install with all the Office suites and everything else, and that's great. I think that people should have that, but I like the minimal install being there as the default. Very, very cool. And this leads in towards, it makes a ton of sense, because in early 2024, in theory, in 6 months, at 24.04 in that release, we may see the first optional install of the fully immutable version of Ubuntu. And what that means is you'll have a base system that you can't really modify. It'll be more immutable, much more akin to a Chrome OS based system where they kind of manage the system in theory, or to have an immutable system, an unchangeable system, and then your applications all get installed into a separate area where you can administer them. This has a lot of benefits and a lot of downsides. I've talked about them quite a bit in the past. I don't know that I want it for my system, but I do see the benefits of it. I go back and forth on immutable systems like this. Personally, I like to always run as root, Thunderdome. I want to be able to go in there and modify everything in my system. And if I want to modify my kernel while it's running, gosh darn it, I want to do that. Is that dumb? Probably, but I like that power. I like to have total control of my computers. But there is a benefit to having an immutable system, including in production systems like the one I'm using right now to record this. I don't want to go in and mess up my system here. I also don't want my kids' systems. I don't want them to go in and mess it all up. Then I just have to go restore it all again. So having an immutable system in certain cases makes a lot of sense. So going more towards a minimal install now in 23.10 sets them up for success in moving towards an immutable system in 2024, next year, which is coming. But one other thing happened. One other little tidbit happened during the Ubuntu 23.10 release, and that is within moments of the release, this really happened, the release disappeared. In fact, I went over to locals, over to lunduke.locals.com, and I said, hey, everybody, the Ubuntu release is out. You can go grab the 23.10 ISO now. I hadn't grabbed it yet. And I'm like, maybe I'll give it a chance this weekend. I'll kick the tires a little bit and see what the latest release feels like. Within moments, people were like, the download's not working. I'm just getting like 404 errors. What the heck's going on? Well, it turns out they had to pull that ISO. That release got nullified, and they had to come up with a brand new release really, really fast because there was a bunch of hate speech in it. This is very real. So they made this announcement shortly after that. I'm just going to read it here. Ubuntu Desktop 23.10 release image is being updated to resolve a malicious translation incident, which I had never heard the phrase malicious translation incident before. It's sort of like being a janitorial engineer. You know what I mean? It just feels like a little bit of a superfluous phrase that doesn't need... Someone just put in words that they didn't want in there, is what they mean. Shortly after release, we identified hate speech from a malicious contributor in a specific set of translations of the Ubuntu desktop installer UI and have taken immediate action. These translations are being removed and an updated ISO will be available to download once we have replaced the offending material. It is important to note that these translations are not part of the Ubuntu archive, and we believe the incident is contained only to translations provided via a third-party translation tool we use for a subset of applications. The affected images that have been removed are Ubuntu Desktop 23.10, Ubuntu Budgie 23.10, and Ubuntu Desktop Daily images. We will update this post with further details on our investigation when an updated desktop image will be available. All right, so let's look at this. I went digging, and I I'm going to show you guys this. I found exactly what they were talking about. It was in the installer, and the localized language was Ukrainian. It was only for the Ukrainian language strings in the installer. And let me see if I've got this up still here. Yes, I do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to quickly glance away from this for a second here. I'm going to put this on the title, so I don't want you guys seeing what I'm seeing here. I'm going to look at some stuff here. Okay, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to show you guys any of this. That is going to get this video yanked off of whatever platform it's on. Not Locals. I could post it on Locals because Locals doesn't censor me. But if this is up on YouTube, which I'm planning to post this video up on YouTube as well, I'm sure YouTube will yank it. So what those? I guess I have it up in Ukrainian. I guess people can see what it is in Ukrainian, but not in English or other languages. Basically, it's mostly about, and it goes on for quite some time, it's mostly kind of gibberish nonsense about Jews. It is about Jews, circumcisions, and also touching on other sexual stuff, some various sex stuff. And here's the thing that I was going through. I have two thoughts, two very distinct thoughts that are worth thinking about here. Number one, Ubuntu says here that it is, we believe the incident is contained only to translations provided via a third-party translation tool we use for a subset of applications. So this doesn't seem likely to me. Looking at it, it looks like deliberate anti-Semitic ramblings put in there by someone and just left. Now it was, I'm curious when it was put in there. I'm gonna have to dig through that a little bit more. And it makes me wonder, is anyone within the Ubuntu community using or testing the Ukrainian language stuff? My guess is no. That tells me, A, no one within Ubuntu, within Canonical, within the Ubuntu community speaks Ukrainian. Otherwise, this would have been caught because it's in the installer. Like, it's just in your face, right? So that means that nobody ever tried to install the Ukrainian version who actually spoke Ukrainian. Number one. That's interesting. Number two, If this came from a translation tool, that means that the translation tool is purposefully translating English to Ukrainian and replacing whatever you typed with random anti-Semitic and kind of pornographic phrases, right? A combination therein. That seems weird. What translation tool is Canonical and Ubuntu using? Like, what? I want to know what tool they use. I mean, seriously, this is a company. This isn't like Canonical is a for-profit company. What possible translation tool could they be using that does that? Did they just find www.translate English to anti-Semitic and pornographic Ukrainian.org? I mean, like, what translation tool are they using? Is that a real one? If it's a company's translation tool, well, that's interesting. Let's find out what company that is and talk to them. Why do they have a translation tool that does that? It seems unlikely to me that this came from a translation tool, unless someone pasted in anti-Semitic and pornographic phrases into the translation tool in order to get them in Ukrainian. I would like to find out about that. So please tell me about that. Putting all that aside for a moment, let's just put all that aside, because that's all just, a single incident. It can be forgiven. Accidents happen. I mean, who hasn't used www.english2pornographic and anti-Semitic Ukrainian.org.edu? I mean, that's just something that happens. But putting that aside, how did this get out? That means that the installer was never tested in the language of the install. Like, they never tested it. It was not tested. That means that the release version, not the beta version, not the final and release candidate version, but the actual version of the Ubuntu ISOs that went out for multiple included for multiple ISOs, several ISOs, all did not get tested. So A, how long was that in there? And how long did it go without it ever getting tested? And B, why is Canonical and the Ubuntu community releasing ISOs that don't get tested? I'm sorry, you can't. When I first got into the tech business, I worked at Microsoft and as a software test engineer for a little while. And part of what I had to test was translated ISOs. Every single language that we supported, we had to test out. And that included running the installers, verifying that everything looked right, and even the languages I didn't speak, I had to do screen grabs and copy and paste and verify, at least spot check here and there that words looked like the translations were coming through correctly, especially after a translation change occurred. But that means in this case, the translation change was applied and uploaded, and it was put up in their source control, and no one thought to double check them. No one ran them through Google Translate. No one even did that until after the release went out. What else is not getting tested? It's a fair question to ask. I mean, how much of the Ubuntu release does not ever have a single eyeball put on it? Not once. Is there stuff that impact? Now, this is some language that we don't want it there, but honestly, it doesn't impact functionality. It just impacts the language that's there, and unless you speak Ukrainian, you'll never even see it, you'll never notice it. Yeah, it's on your hard drive, so that's a little weird, but just the same, it doesn't change the way the computer functions. What if there's stuff in there that does? How little testing does this undergo? Is there literally no one with eyeballs on even brand new functionality? Because this is new installer stuff. This is new changes to the newer Ubuntu installer. So that means with their newest software, they're not checking it. So what's happening with the older stuff that undergoes just little changes here and there? Are they not checking that at all? What the heck kind of code is in there? This brings up a lot of questions, and these are things that come up a lot when we're talking about open source software. Is 1,000 eyeballs on a piece of software is a fantastic thing because it can help with security in tremendously wonderful ways. But that only works if the eyeballs are actually on the code. In this case, the eyeballs are not only not on the code, but they aren't even on the released software itself. No one tried it. Wild. Absolutely wild. And I mean, it just makes it more salacious that it's a little hate speechy. I mean, a lot hate speechy. I mean, it does. It makes it pretty salacious. So I'm curious what the results of their investigation are going to be. We have not heard yet, but there you go. If you did grab the Ubuntu 23.10 ISO before this happened, I honestly don't know if I recommend grabbing the new one or not, because the new one was pushed out even faster than the old one. Because they had to go and make a quick change and shove an ISO out with even less testing than the 23.10 got. And they didn't even install that one on a few languages at the bare minimum. So I'm a little apprehensive. I'm going to hold off installing Ubuntu 23.10 for at least a couple of days. I figure the Ubuntu team is going to be scrambling. They're going to be testing everything. They're going to be checking a whole bunch of stuff right now. I'm going to let them test. I'm going to bet more likely than not, there will be at least one more point update. There will be a 23.10.02 or something, or 0.03 release within the next few days. That's my guess. And I will grab and try that version. But until then, I'm going to wait. All right, if you have not headed over to lunduke.locals.com or any of the other sites I run, such as Conservative Nerds or nerdyentertainment.locals.com. Right now, we've got a sale going through the end of the day tomorrow, Saturday, October 14th, where you can get a lifetime subscription, meaning it runs for the entirety of your life. For all three of those sites, contained together in one little triple bundle of glorious nerdiness for $105. It's $105 and you never have to pay again. You never get advertisements for Visa credit cards or creams that get rid of rashes on your ankles or IBS treatments, whatever. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You just, your information and personal details don't get sold off to the highest bidder marketing ad agency. You get a nice community, a friendly community, and you get it on the cheap. So you can get a yearly pass for all three of them together for $65, which is a huge discount over the regular yearly of $45, which is already a great deal because $45 is super cheap. The monthly is $5 a month, which is a great deal already. Yearly is even cheaper. Triple pass is even cheaper, and then the lifetime triple pass is like the cheapest of all. It's amazing. So go over there and grab that. All three sites are fantastic. All three sites do fantastic things. If you just want the tech, go to lunduke.locals.com. If you want nerdy entertainment stuff, books and comics and all of that, go to nerdyentertainment.locals.com. And if you are a political junkie, head on over to conservativenerds.locals.com. All three are very nerdy. All three are fantastic. And if you don't like politics at all, don't go to conservativenerds.locals.com. Stick to the other two because those stay clear of politics. All right, everybody. With that, I do declare, man, I can't believe that happened. End podcast.